In today's gospel reading from Mark, we hear a couple of different structures, or Mark uses a couple different structures, literary structures, that are very familiar for him to use throughout the course of his gospel. The first is sometimes just called a sandwich approach. So a number of times in Mark's gospel, he starts one story, inserts a second story in the middle, and then concludes the first story. So the most famous of those is probably Jairus' daughter, who was ill, and Jairus came to Jesus and asked him to come to his home and heal his daughter. And they're on the way there, the woman with a hemorrhage for 12 years touches Jesus' cloak, and she gets healed, and then Jesus continues on, and Jairus' daughter has died, but he raises her back to life by saying, Talitha cum, right, which is little girl, arise. In today's gospel, we hear the same thing, the same kind of structure, a sandwich structure, where it starts out with Jesus' family, who thinks he's out of his mind, and then the scribes and the Pharisees, or the scribes and their complaints, Jesus' response to the scribes, and then the family shows up at the house, and Jesus' comments about being brothers and sisters because of God's work. Within the reply of Jesus, there is another structure that's called a chiasm. And a chiasm really is separated into three different ways that it's structured. So the first is that one point is made, then a second point is made. So point A is made, point B is made, and then the response to that is from point B first and then point A. So in today's gospel reading, what we hear is that the scribes call Jesus, or they say he is possessed by Beelzebub, and then he is driving out demons by the prince of demons. And Jesus responds to the second one first. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And then against the first one, he says the parable about the strong man, because Jesus will be the one who ties up the strong man and plunders the lost souls from the devil as he plunders the house, right, in his actions. Isn't all that interesting? The main point today, of course, is that the action of God is happening in Jesus Christ. That he is the way that God is acting in the world. And Jesus, in that action, creates a new reality, the church, where we are brothers and sisters. It draws us into that reality. And the blasphemy against the Holy Spirit that we hear about is actually really a rejection of that gift. It is a saying no, a denial, as we heard, of God working through Jesus. The scribes do it by saying he's possessed, right? But we cannot be forgiven if we do not receive forgiveness. Because God gives that as a free gift for us, a grace for us. And if we reject it, we have rejected God's work. And he doesn't force us to receive his grace. He doesn't force us to respond in faith. Right? In fact, all of Jesus' works, his salvation for us, his forgiveness, his mercy, all that he gives us in redemption, all of that is a gift that's given to us that we're called to receive that gift. In the first reading from Genesis, we hear about the kind of fallout from the original sin, right? Where Adam and Eve eat from the knowledge of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And we shouldn't think of that as an arbitrary command, because God has given them everything, right? God has given them paradise. He's given them breath. He has given them life. All of their needs are taken care of by God. The only condition was not to take for yourself from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but to receive all the goodness that God had to give, right? And so they, in turn, take from that tree. They take, like we are often tempted to do in our own culture. I'm going to get what's mine. I'm going to get mine over you, right? I'm going to take. But love, mercy, grace, these things are freely given and must be freely received to really be true, to be real in our lives. You know, in our relationships of love, that giving of love cannot be taken from somebody, right? It's only freely given. And the reception of that love is what makes it complete for us. My parents, both of them, in their own way, are gift givers, right? And so my dad gives gifts less frequently, but they're usually more extravagant, right? So they're like bigger gifts. And then my mom gives gifts in a way that they're very small gifts typically, but they happen all the time. So she will be at the dollar store and we'll see something that has my name all over it. And she just has to buy it for me, right? And give it to me the next time she sees me. But Dad is kind of a bigger giver. And so I've not always appreciated either of their gifts the way that I should have. So when I was 10, for example, my dad thought it was time for me to have a suit. So we went suit shopping, and I ended up with this 3-piece blue polyester thing that I received, I guess, but not once did I ever wear it. And my mom's gifts, I often got a little frustrated by because I was like, I don't need all this stuff, But I realized for both of them that they were expressions of love. It was love that was being given. And actually, one of my dad's gifts is one of my most prized possessions now. He was actually running a fundraiser for a nonprofit, a charity in Colorado Springs, and it was going to have an auction as part of it. So he got to pick out the items that were going to go in the auction, and he saw that they had Sports Illustrated from the 2012 National Championship team. Do you all remember who won in 2012? The University of Kentucky, just for the record. But it was signed by every member of the team and Coach Calipari. And so he got that to be in the auction, and then he bid on it to get it for me to be able to give it to me, right? And that was an expression of God's love. And each time my mom buys a little gift for me, it is an expression of love. And so I have gotten better in the course of my life of receiving those with gratitude, of receiving the gifts that my dad gives and the gifts that my mom gives with gratitude. As we come to this Eucharist, we're called to receive the gifts of God with gratitude, to receive His love and ultimately His presence in the Eucharist, to receive those gifts freely, to receive them with gratitude. That is part of what we do. And in fact, it's a little detail in how we go through receiving communion, but we don't take communion. We don't come up and pluck something out of the tray, right? We open our hands or open our mouths and we are receiving the gift of God. That's the image of how God cares for us and loves us, that it is a gift freely given that we receive. And of course, then we're called to share that gift as freely as it has been shared with us. That we're called to love others as Jesus has loved us. That it makes a difference for us in going out from here to serve and to love the best that we can from our hearts freely as well. May we be open, may our hearts be open to the gift of God that is present here, and may we take that gift and share it not in a stingy way, but share it with generosity freely to all whom we encounter.